Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and tonight I've got a full house with me. Welcome back.
Good evening.
And Gio.
What is good, guys?
The Premier League returns this weekend, and we are here to go over some of the matches we are looking forward to seeing and how they might play out. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. All right, boys, the Premier League returns, and I know we're all excited, so I have to toss it straight to Gio here. Man U versus Fulham is the first game that we're going to talk about. Now, we did talk, I think, briefly in our previous podcast about Man U, but since then, Gio, there's been a couple of changes at Man U. I think it's been confirmed that De Ligt and Mazraoui, I think both have been confirmed as incoming signings, and then Wan-Bissaka is going out. I guess just before we talk about this game specifically, give us your overall takes on those signings, and we can go around.
I think they're important. I think they're good. I can't seem to find a bad thing about those signings. Obviously, like people will say, how come they didn't, just stay at Bayern if they're so coveted? Why was Bayern so, kind of easy to let them go? Sometimes there's just an influx of players, and you have to prioritize your best players. And if they weren't the best at that club, that doesn't mean they're not going to be good elsewhere. Time and time again, we've seen Man U, lose defenders, mid-season, late season because of injuries, and it's not bad signing two defenders who've played together, have a bit of chemistry, and you know what? Both of them, what they all have in common is that they have played under Ten Hag once upon a time, and they've played under Ten Hag together as well. So, a familiar face there. So hopefully, they come in feeling welcomed and kind of ready to go to slot in, to wherever they need to slot in.
I think it's actually great that these signings are coming in. Ten Hag, or at least the sporting group overtaking Man United, are joined in the thinking that center back is a position that need to strengthen. Lenny Yoro, we already mentioned him as a signing. Unfortunately, he's going to be injured, but De Ligt and Mazraoui, two defenders who last season I think we had spells of Casemiro playing as a makeshift center back, something that none of the Man U fans would have wanted to see. So I think these are welcome signs. De Ligt player, Mac, I know you and I had a little bit of higher expectations for him previous to his most recent move, but this can be a new start for him. What are your thoughts on him specifically, and also the moves that Man U have been making?
So, for one, the De Ligt signing I thought was absolutely phenomenal. I think that arguably be my most favorite signing that Manchester United done over the last couple of seasons. Predominantly because it wasn't too much money in the realm of expectations. I think it was 45 million for him. Again, you're probably getting him on a little bit of low. But he's going back to a manager that he's very, very comfortable with. I think the interesting part would be is in terms of the pace of play, how quickly he can pick it up. I think if he does, and we even get, let's say, 80-90% of what he was at Ajax when he first kind of broke out, I think this is a great signing for Manchester United. This puts Lenny Yoro, as kind of the third choice center half, which I think for his age profile is phenomenal. He shouldn't be expected to play week in, week out. Of course, with the injury, obviously he's not. But even prior to then, I think that would have been way too much to ask for him. So De Ligt beside A. Martinez, getting depth back there, where hopefully you have, 4 injuries before you have to consider playing Johnny Evans at center half. I think that's a great start. So I absolutely love the signing. Mazraoui, again, for me, it's like for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but more of a quote-unquote Ten Hag, comfortable on the ball type of player versus Wan-Bissaka was a no-nonsense business type of defender, which, again, it's more shifting to what Ten Hag would want. And it feels like they are going more so all in on him. So I don't think I think, which if we were to go, let's say, through preseason predictions of how well Manchester United could do, I think if they don't make Champions League, in all likelihood, Ten Hag might get the sack in terms of this, because they've spent so much money on his play style. But now he has, and I don't think he could really argue, this is his team. Majority of the signings are his players of who he wants. So I absolutely love these signings individually. Even if they were to make a change on management, I see no problem with them there because I think they're quality players. The problem for them and going into this game, for both team actually, I would argue, is in the midfield. where, again, Manchester United, the biggest hole, I think, between last season and this season has been in the center of the park. Casemiro is on his last legs. Kobe Mainu is still very young, still very raw. Bruno Fernandes has no defensive presence whatsoever. So I'm very curious to see in the middle of the park how weak Manchester United are, and I think that will be their flaw this year, similarly to Fulham, where they still haven't found a replacement for Joao Palhinha, who went to Bayern Munich. So their issue is going to be the same. They did bring in Emile Smith-Rowe, which was a record signing for them. He scored already in preseason. I think he's going to fit in well on the offensive end and is going to get the playing time, which he really couldn't fit in and get ahead of either Martin Odegaard or Declan Rice in the Arsenal team, which, again, fair enough. That's very difficult to get into. But defensively, for them as well, in the middle of the park, I think they're going to be very soft. So I think this matchup that we're starting off with is very interesting, where both teams, I would argue, the weakest part of the pitch are the same, and they probably have areas that they can expose the other team. And if we're to jump into the matchup, when you're looking at the likes of Anthony Robertson on the left-hand side, Fulham going to Old Trafford last year and picking up their first result in 20 years, I think they're going to come in with quite a bit of confidence, knowing that they can hurt Manchester United. On the other side, I think this might be one of the easier tested midfield Man United, where they can control the game and play to what I think. If a lot of times last year we're talking about them being a transitional team, where this might be one game where they dominate the ball and get at a Fulham team and create enough chances where maybe Fulham don't have a chance to get out. So very excited for this matchup. Both teams have made a lot of adjustments. I like Manchester United's more, but should be an exciting start to the season.
Yeah, I mean, we hope that, with these changes, we see a new Man United, and maybe Gio can touch on what he hopes to see as well, because, Fulham did finish 13th in the Premier League table last year. Man U did finish five places above them, but going into it now, even just a couple of days before the game, we don't necessarily know what to expect. Though, will some of the new signings, such as Joshua Zirkzee, be one of those players that come big for Man United? We have an injury to Højlund. Will Rashford be starting as a striker in this game? Gio, what do you think will happen and also will Anthony be able to influence this game in a positive way for Man United? So many questions for you, Gio.
That last question was a loaded question. So I choose not to answer that for the time being. But what I will say is that what we're looking for at Man U this season is defensive structure and defensive reliability. I think is the biggest thing. Oftentimes in the past few seasons, we've often, as a fan myself, and I think I can speak on behalf of all fans, is once the opposing team got the ball, there's a pretty good chance that they were going to score, and it was a very good chance that Man U were going to go into the half down 1 or 2-0 and have to battle back. So I think the biggest thing this season, I think a big goal this season, is obviously limiting goals conceded. That way they don't finish with a -1 goal differential again. Maybe 0 this year would be fantastic. But hey, the simplest way to win a game or to have a chance to win a game is to keep a clean sheet and keep balls out of your half. And I think with the size they've added, with the talent, I'll confidently say talent they've added, I think they have a much better chance at that, because they no longer have to, God forbid any injuries, no longer have to play their weaker defenders. So that's always a plus. So I think that should be the major goal this season. So fans, don't expect, them to go and play some amazing counter-attacking football. Don't look for that. Look for defensive consistency, because once that happens, it allows the offensive players to, maybe push up the pitch a little more, put a little bit more pressure on the other team, because the back line and that central midfield is going to do what they need to do to get the strikers the ball.
Yeah, and really they need consistency to drive them forward in the table here. At home, this could be the best way to start it. Of course, it's going to be the first game of the weekend, starting on Friday night. But it could go wrong. If it does go wrong, it could be horribly wrong, especially with the home crowd. You don't want that happening. Matt, final thoughts on the game?
Again, thus far this preseason for Manchester United, I've been a little bit worried, because it seems like they've even gone further away to, I guess, what a lot of people were expecting when Ten Hag first came in terms of like control, dominant possession type of football, one way or another. A lot of teams do it different. You see Liverpool try to implement something what Slot did with Feyenoord, and even kind of feels like very similar to Roberto De Zerbi with Brighton last year, where you see teams like Arsenal copying what Manchester City did. What was this version of Manchester United where, for me, they've kind of gone further away from that in this preseason thus far from what I've seen them, where they even gotten more transitional, where they play the passes quicker, longer, trying to create those transitional moments, and it's stretching the pitch so much that's worrisome for me. With these new signings, I think you're getting more pace, at least on the defensive end, so maybe you can help cover that. But the key area of the pitch is going to be even stretched out further, in my opinion, and that's in the middle of the park. So I think what this will do is against teams like Fulham, where in those transitional moments, they're going to be in one-on-one and be able to consistently beat their player. So they're not as likely going to get exposed. But I think it's going to raise their floor, but kind of lower their ceiling, if that makes sense. Where against the better teams, they're going to struggle even more because if you give a better team more areas to get at you, they're going to do it. They have the quality of players to do so. But against the likes of teams like Fulham, I think this may help them be a little bit more consistent, because they're not over kind of completely changing and scrapping their play style. So again, I think we may see a higher floor for Manchester United this season, which may result in at least a positive goal difference. But for me, in those big games, I think they're going to be in a position where it's going to be even tougher. So hopefully they get off to a good start, because I think this could set their tone and hopefully answer a lot of these questions that we have.
Well, I think on that note, I think what Man U fans would want to see is consistency. And even if you do get beat by the bigger teams, as long as you're able to do the business against the teams that you should beat, that's progression. And moving forward, you just want consistency year on year, which is kind of what's leading up to the next game. And in terms of consistency, we're talking about Man City now. They are actually facing maybe one of the most inconsistent teams with the number of signings that they've brought in. Man City versus Chelsea. Game of the weekend, Gio put it here, definitely, because it could go one way or the other, and we're here for the results. What do you think will happen in this game? Of course, Man City being active more so in the selling part of this transfer window, but still working on some things from their end, as opposed to Chelsea, who have signed everyone and their uncle, but we don't really know what to expect from them. So, Mac, what do you expect to happen in this game?
So, again, there are two different ways that I can go about this when I'm answering this question for you, right? One, of the last four matchups, City have won 3, Chelsea have tied 1. However, in majority of those games, they've been close, where in January and May of last year, Man City only beat Chelsea by 1. Man City beat Chelsea 4-0 in the FA Cup third round. And there was a very exciting, if you remember, this feels like a century ago, a 4-4 result in November. So these two teams between each other, they have been kind of highs and lows over the last couple of fixtures of how things can play out. Tough part is, and I'll be transparent with you, I think everyone knows, what is Chelsea's starting 11? Because I don't know, like let's say if you're a fan of Chelsea, I don't think there's ever a time period watching football. I am 31, so of the last, let's say, 20 years of my life watching football, looking at a squad and having different fans' opinions of like what should the starting 11 be. There's so many different variables. I think there's only one constant, probably, between every single fan starting 11. That's Cole Palmer. But aside from that, you can have every single fan is going to have their own opinion of what the starting 11 should be. Versus most teams, you would want to generally have an idea of going into the first game. Hey, this is probably our best 11, guys. This is what we should see out there. Versus, I don't know. So realistically, on Chelsea end, can I offer any predictions? Can I give you any thoughts of what they'll be? No. I'm very concerned in terms of Maresca, the head coach coming in from Leicester. I thus far this preseason, I haven't seen anything phenomenal from them. I can see what they're trying to do. The question is he a quality enough manager to do so? Where I do think they have downgraded on coaches from last season to this season and just added more players to the fire. So again, I don't know what you will be able to get from them. City, though, I think consistently what we've seen is quality year in, year out against teams like this, where I would be surprised if City don't come in and walk in and start with the result. I think, again, I'd not be surprised if Haaland scores a goal. Probably, I assume that's probably going to happen against this Chelsea team. Maybe even a couple tap-ins. Who knows? It's more so for me where you see that consistency of City, how they're going to play, how they're going to approach, and Chelsea are nowhere near good enough or close enough to doing that yet. Where for me, this game, walking in, I know might be starting off the season with a pie on my face, but this is a joke of a start for City and for Chelsea, where Chelsea have no chance for me. City should walk right all over them. The only question, I guess, we really didn't do a preseason of our expectations, where this, though, if we're looking at a perspective of a whole season, City, for me, this is the most stale they've been, the most unexcited they've been since Pep Guardiola's taken over. But I'm caught between two minds, where there's been 3 times in Pep Guardiola's career where he hasn't won the league with his team. That was against probably the best Real Madrid team of all time. You're talking about the first season at City and then COVID season at City. So if all else fails, consistently he wins. So I think going into the season, but this for me, again, of everything, is probably the most stale, most unexcited I've seen thus far. And there hasn't been any connections. We've seen any reports of them using their money they got for Alvarez to sign a big player. Most reports have been where it'd actually be next season, when they're in for players like Florian Wirtz to be able to step in and replace the Kevin De Bruyne's with those types of players, right? So again, I don't know. For this individual game, I think City should walk over them. They'll have control over the midfield. They'll a team that this is the team consistency versus team inconsistent. So they'll probably win. I not much to say there.
Okay, well, I mean, you've covered a lot of what we expect the game to go like, and I think Gio and I, we can both agree on that. One other thing I would say is the one person that Man City were apparently linked with was Liverpool player Luis Diaz, and I don't know where that came from, but hey, if that's the case, we'll see what happens. On the flip side, Gio, there's been a lot of activity for Chelsea, and even more activity with the potential signing of Joao Felix, and even a trade deal happening with Napoli for Osimhen and Lukaku. Walk us through what they need to do. Will this help them at all? And will the fact that there's a lot of players, trying to make a case for themselves for Chelsea this early in the season, and we saw Pep saying, our players are going to likely take a slow start to the season and then they'll probably ramp up. Could we see an upset here? A lot of questions there, but what do you think, Gio?
I mean, to be honest, the only thing, really missing from these deals being completed is, Todd Bowley just opening his wallet again. So, to be honest, if it were to happen, it would have happened already. Todd Bowley, as we know, isn't going to shy away from splashing that cash on anything and anyone. So yeah, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Chelsea fans just need to be patient. But, so what if they get Osimhen? They don't have anybody to provide him that service. So is Osimhen really going to help you? What they're missing is leadership in the pitch, which they don't have. They lost a lot of it. Arguably losing, I hate to say it, Jorginho, the Jorginhos, the Thiago Silvas, the guys who's experienced a lot more football than these younger guys, and these guys individually that they've bought, individually I say, are talented, but there is absolutely zero cohesiveness in this team. Everybody is just doing wind sprints up and down that pitch, back and forth, looking to get a touch on the ball, looking to score a goal, looking to get a tap in, as Nicholas Jackson is very fond of himself. But I think, they lack a lot of it. They lack a lot of that experience. They lack a lot of that cohesiveness that, signing a Osimhen, signing a Joao Felix doesn't really help. They have so many players on their roster that, are good, can be great role players on other teams, say like a Man City or United or Real Madrid, those types of teams. But individually on this team, they don't bring much to the table. So I think beyond signing these big names, they need to sign more veterans to really keep that locker room in check. But hey, that's not my problem. That's Todd Bowley's problem.
Yeah, and the only person I could think of in this game that screams leadership, and this is stretch, is former Man City player Raheem Sterling. And there is a constant theme here, Raheem Sterling, Cole Palmer, even though Enzo Maresca, who Mac mentioned already, previous supporting staff of Man City's, and that I think that's maybe the only way they can get a positive result here is if they somehow, game the system and turn things against Pep by being experience under him. But apart from that, I don't necessarily see Chelsea getting results. Anything could happen, but if I'm a betting man and FanDuel, of course, will be seeing me return to the app come this weekend. I'm putting my money on Chelsea. No, sorry, on City. Not saying I'm a betting man. Gio?
One last thing. I think there should be, FanDuel, hear me out, DraftKings, hear me out. If anybody is able to correctly guess the starting lineup for Chelsea that week, the odds should be astronomical. That payout should be huge because that arguably is now the hardest thing to do on this earth.
A legitimate question. It might be harder than doing like the NCAA bracket. Like,
It is.
It might be harder.
It is. It is. It is. It is. Until the facts say otherwise, it is.
Exactly. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll take a quick break here, boys, and then we'll be back covering some more games that are to take place this weekend. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Also Footy, guys. We are going to continue now discussing another game taking place this weekend. Mac, tossing it straight to you now. Arsenal versus Wolves. Arsenal, of course, are looking to compete for the title once again. And what better way to get to sort of make a statement by getting a home win against Wolves? How do you see this this challenge coming for Arsenal upcoming this weekend, Mac?
You kind of put it in your question how you phrased it to me. Challenge? I don't mean to be too upfront. I don't see really too much of a challenge. Wolves have only won one of their last 13 away games against Arsenal, losing 8 of them, and that was in 2020. So they haven't had a good streak of playing at Arsenal. So I very much expect for them to be able to come out and Arsenal for themselves to be able to come out and dominate the game. They had just come back, I think, a couple of days ago from playing against Olympique Lyon and scoring 2 goals, winning 2-0, both from set pieces, one from Saliba, one from Gabriel. So they've been in fine form in the offseason thus far. I think they're just getting back to their best in a lot of ways where the team's rounding out into form. And you have players like Calafiori as a new signing, Julian Timber. I'm very curious to see what they do at the left back position because Zinchenko's had a good preseason where both of those players that I've just mentioned prior to haven't featured as much. So I'll be very interested to see what their starting 11 looks like. In addition, looks like the talks have kind of cooled down with Miko Moreno, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any evolution there. For this individual game, I think what we're going to see is Arsenal really dominate possession. Surprise, surprise. The question would be for Lopetegui, I think, in regards to Wolves, what they can do on in transition on the counterattack. I think for them, it's going to be tough. Pedro Neto, I know that he was injured a lot for last year, but that was arguably their best player. So how effective they can be in transition, I think is going to be a question for me against this Arsenal team, where that's in all likelihood their best avenue to score goals, where Arsenal should kind of shove them out, come back in. You really want to start off the season as kind of with a statement where if you do get lucky, which I assume you won't, from your London rivals with Chelsea picking up anything against City, start off strong, come in with a dominating result, really kind of drown them out where you just don't win by a lot, but you dominate the game in all facets. I wouldn't be surprised that we start the season like that because that very much was towards the end of last season for Arsenal. And for me, very much so, it should carry over considering a lot of the players didn't have too deep of an offseason aside from Saka and Declan Rice going to the finals. So again, for me, they should be quite comfortable in this game, and I'd be surprised if Wolves get anything out.
Just want to make a note there. I think Lopetegui has gone on to West Ham. It's Gary O'Neill that's managing Wolves.
Yes.
And on that note, I think very much so. I think under Gary O'Neill, it sounds like they're going to try to be a lot more defensively structured with their shape. They did lose Max Kilman and of course Gio put it here, Pedro Neto. So big seasoned players for Wolves, bringing in a couple of younger faces. I think the notable one from Man City, Tommy Doyle. Not sure what to expect from him as a forward so far, but maybe he has what it takes to get them forward. But Gio, I don't think we can really expect much from Wolves for this game specifically. Can Arsenal though make a statement and get a big win here? What do you think?
As much as Mac tries to downplay it, I think it's necessary for them to come out and really just flex their muscles to know, obviously the signings to, re-strengthen that back line, especially in the left back role. And like Max said, Zinchenko had a good preseason, so, those are good problems to have. But they really need to come out here and show Man City we're ready. No matter if you guys start slow, whether you guys end strong, we're ready. We're gonna come out and show you what we want and how we're gonna get it. And it's to destroy teams if that means it is what it takes. But Mac does make a good point. If they come out and dominate every facet of the game and win 1-0, I think they'll be equally as happy. But I think this season, when Arsenal's looking at the schedule and they're seeing teams like Wolves, those bottom table teams, anything less than a win is a loss in their eyes because they're just missing points at that point. So they really need to come out strong, start the season off, on the right foot, and start the pressure on those City fans from the very get go.
Yeah, and well, we kind of agree how this game will play out. Mac, I did want to get your opinion on. I think you already mentioned the Marino situation. Not sure if you've mentioned the other possible incomings. Firstly, of course, I want to mention. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Nketiah's move to Marseille was called off. So I think he's for the moment staying at Arsenal. But there are also rumors about Kingsley Coman maybe coming in as on a loan for Arsenal. Do you think if Arsenal don't get a big result here in terms of upwards of three or more goals, there is any panic in trying to make a move for that forward line? Because we've seen already transfer activity in defense could come in for Moreno as well for that midfield. But I think the offense, which did well last year, not saying it needs to freshen up, but could always help with in terms of depth. What do you think will happen there, Mac?
So for transfer expectations for Arsenal's, I think Eddie Nketiah, it looks like the Marseille rumor was called off. Yeah, he's now been linked to Bournemouth as a replacement for Dominic Solanke. I think that's been the favored rumor as of right now. I think that's going to be a big piece where if you're going to get a good fee for him and a player like, let's say as an example, like Reece Nelson, who alongside as Emil Smith-Rowe were the three kind of Hell End boys rumored to leave Arsenal this offseason. If you do get both of those or one of those for a heavy price, you may be in a position to kind of go on the market aside from Marino. I think for me, ideally, of course, for Arsenal fans as a whole, adding an attacking option, because let's say we do get a Gabriel Jesus season again where he isn't as, let's say, consistent in his playing. I think he scored 2 league goals all of last year, which is quite low in terms of overall tally. You need more output there. And a player like Havertz maybe doesn't have as good of a season as they did last year. Martinelli has been, I would say, inconsistent given how he was injured for large stretches of last year. And Trossard probably isn't someone that you want to play in, week out. So for me, I think adding another option there, I would say, I think they're in need of a game changer. If they had a player like that in their final three, I think they would go into the season, and I think I would go into the season saying they are the favorites. But because they haven't added that game changer in the front line, I think they're very much still in line with City, where there isn't too much difference between them. So yeah, in terms of transfer activity, I think that game changer is only if they get the outgoings that are needed to make it make sense. Whereas the Moreno, I think that's probably in all likelihood something that they want to do irrelevant of those changes. Because settling in, I think Jorginho playing week in, week out is not a good look, and Partey has been oft injured, so having another replacement in midfield where you continue to allow Declan Rice to kind of flex his muscles and play either as 6 or an 8 depending on the matchup, having someone there alongside him I think makes a lot of sense. So that's what I anticipate for them for the remainder of the offseason. Moreno for sure I think should happen. I'll be surprised if it doesn't, whereas another signing is only going to be based off outgoings. Okay,
well then moving on to a team that has been active in terms of outgoing transfers, but none incoming. Everyone's favorite team, the Liverpool Football Club. They will be facing newly promoted Ipswich Town, and I'll of course give you guys my couple thoughts here. It should be on paper an easy game for Liverpool, facing the newly promoted side. I think Liverpool have been quite consistent in their preseason games, winning quite a few of them, but also trying to implement that new style of play that Matt kind of mentioned earlier. Though the question is, of course, we saw the news as well. Zubimendi has rejected Liverpool, opted to stay at Real Sociedad, and that is a hole that Liverpool are still looking to fill. I've seen Gravenberch feature in that endo position, and that might be a way forward for Liverpool. But I guess we'll have to see beyond this game and closer to when the transfer window closes later this month, what happens there. But I guess I'll toss it to you, Gio, first. We expect a comfortable win here from Liverpool. What do you think, Gio?
Oh no, you expect a comfortable win. I think obviously Slot's first game at the
Right.
helm. He really needs to just put the nerves at ease. I think, as the season, comes closer, a lot of fans seeing all these teams make such great signings, well, not great signings, signings in general, for that matter, and they're worried. They're worried, what if we can't keep up? What if Salah gets injured? What if Luis Diaz gets injured? Or what if Luis Diaz ends up leaving? Who else do we have? What else do we have? So a lot of the season isn't really going to come down to, their defense. I think their defense has proven that, we don't necessarily have the best back line, but we can make it work. It's more so how the front three is going to bang in enough goals so that the back line is even more at ease. Because, obviously Darweezy has been progressing since the last couple of seasons he's been at Anfield. We know what we're going to get from Luis Diaz. He's going to take players on one-on-one. Apart from his injury last season, I think he's still a great contributor to that team. But Mo Salah is that guy. Mo Salah needs to come in and perform. That also only bodes well for Liverpool fans. One, he's scoring goals. Two, he's still holding up his values. So that when he does decide to leave, for the Saudi Pro League, Liverpool is still getting a good chunk of money out of him.
Yeah, and of course, Mo Salah is still the talisman for Liverpool, so we'll be keeping an eye out for him. Mac, same question, I guess, to you. Gio put it here that Ipswich haven't been in the Premier League for over 20 years. Could they come back with a bang, or do you also see a comfortable win for Liverpool here?
Very, 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 very comfortable. I think this beginning of the season for Liverpool, I would be surprised if they're not. For me, I think they're in the most interesting position of any of the bigger teams in the Premier League. The reason being is where I think going to the season, based off of everything we've seen thus far, expectations going in, I think there's clear top two. And I think if you shuffle anywhere with a team between 4 to 10, let's say your Manchester United, your Spurs, your Chelseas, your West Hams, your Aston Villas, your Newcastles, if you put those in a pot and jumble them around any order, I wouldn't be surprised how that works out. For me, Liverpool clearly have better quality than the rest of those teams, but still don't have enough to get close enough, I would argue, to the Arsenal, Man Cities. So I think they're comfortably in their own tier. The real question for me is the play style and how that adapt and how that changes and evolves throughout the season. Where I think beginning of the season, as they're learning it, I think is going to be to their benefit, because teams like Ipswich, the teams like that they're going to face, are going to be surprised that Liverpool coming on and literally like put the foot on the ball and stand on it and allow you to come at them and apply pressure, which opens up space in behind. And I think as we get deeper into the season, which is going to be weird as Liverpool get more comfortable playing that style, I think even more so, Premier League managers are going to go, hey, we can't do that. We got to be able to make sure we sit back and absorb, even if they want us to be able to come onto them. So even as they get more comfortable in that play style, it's going to become more and more difficult, where their quality, their separation between the teams below them is going to start to thin. So I expect a very hot start from Liverpool, starting with this game. And for the beginning of the season, as they start to get figured out, before they have the signings to evolve, to get better at it, I think that might be their struggle spot where they might flail out towards the end of the season. That's my expectations for them, but I think they're comfortably in that their own tier by themselves, where they're not in the top two, but I wouldn't put them with the rest of the pack. So again, this very much is comfortable for them. I think 5 of the last 6 seasons they played teams that have recently been promoted, so it seems like they always get a softball to start the season. Isn't that lucky? But yeah, they should comfortably see this game out. There should be no problems.
Hey, we're getting the Man City luck of the draw this time around, I guess. But that in itself, we'll keep an eye out for that game. Quickly, before we wrap up the rest of the podcast, though, there's a couple other games that we can go around and talk about. And one of the games that I'm specifically looking forward to will be Newcastle versus Southampton. I'm looking forward to this because Newcastle, they performed well in the season before last. didn't do as well as we wanted them or expected them to do last season. But this time around, they haven't been too active in the transfer window. They have a settled squad. Eddie Howe now, of course, knows what he has to work with, and I feel like this could be another game that they can use to get started and get all 3 points, get all those guys going. Of course, Sandro Tonali, a player that they have been missing, won't be returning in this game, but he knows he has him essentially in his back pocket ready to go at the end of the month. I think he's returning on the 27th. So it's important for Newcastle against a newly promoted Southampton to get a big win here. I think they have confirmed Lewis Hall and Lloyd Kelly as two defensive players coming in. So Dan Burn, you've served the club well, but I don't think you'll be seeing a lot of minutes at left back anymore. So that's interesting to me that they're kind of getting more dynamic on the back line and maybe transitioning to more of a fluid team. So Newcastle, I'm excited for them to maybe be get a big win here to set them up for the rest of the season. I guess I'll toss it to you, Mac. Then, is there any other game that stands out to you, or did you want to add on to that Newcastle Southampton game?
So quickly, I think this year Newcastle's can be very much last year's Aston Villa, where Aston Villa this year can be very much Newcastle last year, where they're going to get surprised. They're going to get kind of found out in terms of the depth of their squad. Newcastle, I think, would be a very good team this year. I wouldn't be surprised, and probably realistically for me, are my pick probably to finish inside the top 5 because they have one of the best sixes in the world, and they have one of the best strikers in the world. And that in the Premier League, if you can kind of guarantee their fitness week in, week out, is a good way to success. But the team I'm actually most fascinated by is a team, I think, who are Palace playing again? But for me, the reason why I really just want to talk about Palace.
Brentford.
So for me, Brentford, sorry. For me, Palace, the most interesting team. One, you're talking about in terms of one of the Premier League teams losing one of their best players with Michael Olise going to Bayern Munich. I think that's going to be a huge, huge loss for Palace. But if we're looking at towards the end of last season, who was performing on top form was Palace. When Glasner came in, you saw a complete revival. Was that because you got your players back from injury, like Eze at that time, Olise, Bateta was in the form of his life? Was that all just temporary? Because they were on a hot streak of hot streaks towards the end of last season. So does that continue over? And could they be a threat to finish in the top half of this table? I think so. I think if Mateta is who he was at the end of last season, they're going to be a very difficult team. Because now I think it's more so than ever where it seems like as they staying, I don't expect him to leave because they've already sold Elise. I would argue not enough money. You probably could have gotten more, but you've already let him go, so you probably going to do everything you can to hold on to Eze. Things are going to run through him. Adam Morton came in, looked good when they initially did sign in. He went to the Euros, probably picked up very good experience there. So I think for me, this team, I think, are on the doorstep of doing something special, of finishing in the top half, which Palace haven't really done over the last couple of years, where they've mostly been on the not inside the relegation talk, but right outside them. Whereas this year, I feel like if they continue the trend of form that they had in London end of last season, could be very much, let's say, in a West Ham-like position that we've seen historically from them. So very excited for what they do this season. So I'm looking forward to watching them play against Brentford.
Okay, Joe, if you can add anything to those two games, or if there's a specific game that you are specifically looking for this weekend, let us know.
Yeah, I think it has to be Villa. Obviously, new signings, outgoing signings. How does that change the dynamic of the team? How does that change their performance on the pitch? Obviously, Matson being a very big one, and then losing, Luis in the middle of the pitch, who was really a workhorse for them. So that's going to be very interesting. But hey, sometimes when people, overachieve the next season, how is always the thought process of how do we top last season? Maybe they don't need to top last season. They just need to be consistent, as consistent as they possibly can, as they possibly can. They have a lot of strong new signings in the, like I said, Matson, they have Amadou Onana, and then they added a veteran presence, Ross Barkley, as well, which I don't think is a bad shout, because he had a decent season last year, and he deserves to play in the Prem, I think. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, and of course they're facing West Ham, who have been active themselves. We already covered the moves of Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Max Gillen, but also they brought in Nicholas Füllkrug from Dortmund. So that could be, you could look at it either way. It could be one of the players that breaks that curse that West Ham have with their strikers, or it could be another, not no disrespect to Gianluca Scamacca, but his time at West Ham was not fruitful, and hopefully Nicholas Füllkrug can make it different. So we'll keep an eye out for that game as well. This concludes, guys, our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Next time you hear from us will be early next week when we review the opening weekend of the Premier League. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Peace out.
Thank you, Gio.
Take care, guys.
See you guys soon.